start. Perfect. Hello, Internet. We have a really exciting build for you today. I'm here with Adam Kruger, full-time friend of mine from school. He's jumped around to a lot of different jobs. You can check out his LinkedIn and see what he's been up to. But today, he is our first guest host for Are We There Yet? AI. So thank you, Adam, for joining us.
Thanks, Martin. Excited to do this.
Yeah, I think just first and foremost, like you were the first person to submit something. I was very excited, and you've always like when we've interacted on LinkedIn, like when we were looking at some of the posts, like you've jumped into AI. You've been like a good pioneer in like trying to experiment with things. So I was hoping you could just like show us what it is you built. We're very interested in what kind of problem it's solving, any difficulties you had in building it, but really like how it all came together. So yeah, floor is yours. Like maybe you can walk us through like what you built and what it does.
Can you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah. So first off, I'll say like I've done a bunch of experimenting with like using AI to build stuff over the last few months. Like for outside of work, I've had, I'd say, a lot more success like at work actually like building stuff. But this is one of the few things like I've built like in my personal time. Happy to speak to like some of the other stuff personally or with work, but I'll deep dive like this a little bit. Basically, the motivation was, I think it's been like a while. Like maybe this idea came to mind like at least a year or two ago, maybe more, where it was like, I've been using Goodreads for a while, which is like, for those who don't know, it's like a social way to kind of track what you're reading and see what other people are reading. And I recently learned about like Letterboxd, which is like a similar thing for movies, where you can, track what you've watched. But I didn't really see anything for podcasts. And like I'm consuming, I find more and more podcasts. Like a lot of my friends and like coworkers like listen to podcasts a ton. And I'm always curious, like, what are my friends, what are my coworkers listening to? And I feel like some people might be interested to see like what am I consuming? And I thought it'd be cool. Like there didn't even seem to be a place like that's popular yet to track it, but I thought it'd be even better if you could like automatically sync so that I like with Letterboxd and with Goodreads, you have to when you finish reading a book or finish watching a movie, you got to go in there and add it. So I basically wanted to see with AI if it was possible to like build something where it would automatically kind of read from my podcast app. And basically add it to this like tracking history. So I basically chatted with Claude about it. I chatted with Claude Code. And I think, basically I'm happy to share afterwards if it's helpful. Like I think I can export like the session transcript with Claude. You could include that in the blog post if it's helpful.
Well, I think just to start, like what I'm curious about is, first of all, like what are you use Claude Code, so you use that. Maybe you use like other design tool or other. But like, what is this actually built off? So if I was to like, first of all, like how it is actually built with Claude Code, or do you just sort of like offload all the thinking to Claude Code and just like sit back? Like, how did you actually go about building this? Not like the actual response you used, but like what was your process?
Yeah, so I think I've built like probably like 5 to 10. Yeah, maybe even 10 to 15 like apps or tools like this in my personal time, like over the last few months. And each time I do it, I learn something that makes it a bit easier next time. So like this one is built. So Vercel is where it's hosted. And then like the code is in GitHub. But like, there was a time when the first project I hadn't used Vercel before, and I had to, there's some like learning curve with like getting set up. But now that I've used Vercel for a bunch of projects, like it's like, and I guess Claude Code has like saved probably some like memory and some like in terms of like how I like to set up these apps. So basically there's no cost to set this up. It was totally free. And Vercel is where it's hosted. And then basically the prompt to Claude was something along the lines of like, I want an equivalent to Letterboxd or or Goodreads for podcasts, ideally it's automatically syncing. And I asked Claude to basically research what's available. And I think it was Claude that came across an app called Pocket Casts, which has basically an API or like the ability to pull your data from their backend. And then Claude basically helped me set it up so that there's an automation where like basically I gave it access to my Pocket Cast account. And there's like an automation where once every 12 hours it pulls the latest. I was previously using a different podcast app, but I just chatted with Claude and I was like, is it easy to switch over? It's like, yeah, just follow these couple steps. And it was super easy to like basically export a file with all of my, like, I didn't want to have to re-add all of my favorite podcasts, but it was like super easy to export them from the other podcast app and import them to this one. So I switched the app I'm using and I like it just as much. And yeah, so basically it like automatically tracks what I'm listening to. And then, I've just iterated a little bit on it. I haven't spent a ton of time on this, but like I wanted the ability, I thought it might be cool to be able to like add notes on like what I learned from the episode or like why I listened to it, or to add like a rating for it. So I just go back to Claude and Claude helps me like build these incremental features to it. So
sorry, just to interject. So you're using an API for the podcasting app you're using. That means you have to move your entire listening habit over to this podcasting app. Like you couldn't like use Apple Podcasts, or not that you couldn't, but like this app specifically, like, you need to use this specific podcasting app that has an available API. So it's not generally available to like Apple or another podcasting service.
That's right. Yeah. So that's really, I feel like, going to hurt adoption. Like I haven't tried to promote this, but like most people are not going to switch their listening app. But for me, so yeah, you could have an alternative, which is I think still equivalent to Letterboxd or Goodreads, where you have to manually like search for the episode that you listen to and add it. Which I think would like is like a decent experience, but this is obviously a better experience where you can have it automatically sync based on what I'm listening to, and I don't have to remember to like add it. But yeah, to answer your question, there's only one app, like mainstream app, it seems, that makes it possible to export this data to set up this sync. Maybe there's a different way, but I couldn't find a way to do it with like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of the other more popular apps.
I think one thing that I can, like, when I speak to people who are working with Claude Code or even just touching this as a new thing, like there's sometimes a confusion between what you're seeing on the front end versus what's happening in the back end. So in your process, you basically ask Claude, hey, this is what I want to do. Go find me an app that does this. And it gave you some suggestions. And so then it said, hey, this company has an API. That might be unfamiliar to some people. Like, how do I work with an API? What is an API? When you were doing this, like, what was your level of understanding like APIs and how to work with them? And then how comfortable were you setting that up and setting this data flow to go from these two apps to each other?
Yeah, I would say like a year ago, I had like no comfort with APIs. I've gotten some comfort like over my last job. I got some experience working with them and from using Claude Code. But like I wouldn't say I'm very experienced with APIs. I'd say when in doubt, when chatting with Claude, like I think people often like it's not perfect, but like people underestimate like how powerful it is, and oftentimes like I guess a learning or like a habit I've built with Claude is if Claude says something to me that I don't understand, I'll just be like, what do you mean by an API? Like, can you explain it to me like I'm five? And like usually, like sometimes Claude will not do a good job, but oftentimes it will. So like that would be my advice, or what I found helpful is like if Claude shares something with me that I don't understand, I'll just be like, can you explain that again? Or like I didn't follow. And like oftentimes it'll do a really good job of explaining it in a different way.
When you made some prompts and it basically like it gave you this back. I don't know how many like times you had to go back and forth, but how close was what you initially prompted Claude to do to this outcome that you are seeing now? Like, what would you say? Like, how many sessions did it take you to get to refine this down, or was it like literally in one shot? Like, how much back and forth did you need to get in order to see what you're seeing now?
I don't like, I think it was like there's been a lot of iterations. Like if I go to my GitHub and I go to this repo, um, I'm also like caveat, like I'm pretty new, like I haven't used GitHub like 15 months ago, like a year and a half ago. So like,
Yeah.
and it was intimidating for me, but like this is one of the things where it's just like there's like a little bit of discomfort, like with like trying these new things, but like it's just like such a powerful tool that like I feel like it's worth it. But anyways, it's showing there's like 37 deployments. So basically, I think like sort of like 37 or so iterations of this. So the version you're seeing now is not the initial prompt. That said, like 80 to 90% of what you're seeing was probably in the first like 1 to 3 kind of iterations of those 37. So I think it did a pretty good job out of the bat, and like most of those 37 have been like smaller refinements. Um, so yeah, that hopefully that answers your question somewhat.
Do you have other people using this, or is this currently just like you're the only one using it right now?
Yeah, I'm the only one using it right now. It's pretty new. I haven't promoted it at all, aside from it being on my website,
Mm.
which my website I don't promote a lot. It's like on my LinkedIn. So yeah, no one's using it yet, but like I've set it up so that you can easily create your own page and do it. Um, but yeah, like this is a tool that it's just me using it as of now.
Mm.
Um, yeah, there's been other, like I said, I think I've had the most success with like AI tools at work, like making lots of changes to like the product at my last company, and those new features and changes were used by like lots of customers. In terms of like in my personal life, like these experiments, this one is just me. There's like a different app that I worked on, probably like the app that I worked on the most out of all of like the side projects I've worked on, like in terms of hours I've sunk into it. And this one, it didn't take off, but I did have maybe like, can't remember, somewhere between like 20 to 50 people like try it.
Mm.
Um, I don't think there's anyone still using it, but there was like, a few days or like a couple weeks in which there were like some people using it. Um, yeah, in terms of like things that are like other people are using still, I mean, I built like my brother-in-law's a cabinet maker. Like I built a website for him that he's using for his business.
Yeah.
So that's like, I guess, a real thing that's like being used. Um, yeah.
So for this project specifically, like, what was like the most surprising thing you learned while using the AI? Not necessarily like the hardest thing, but like what was like something surprising that you learned new from doing this?
Sorry, and I realized I wasn't sharing my screen when I jumped to. This was the other thing I mentioned that like I spent the most time on. But anyways, to answer your question, jumping back to the podcast one, and I'm happy to chat
Yeah.
about any of the other projects. But
We
um,
have lots of posts in the future, so we'll
yeah,
have
yeah,
you
yeah,
back for new interviews.
yeah, yeah. So for the podcast one, for this app specifically, you're saying, is there anything that I can recall like learning that stood
Yeah, like
out?
what was like the most surprising thing you learned through this process when building it?
Um, I think I think as you can imagine, like I said, I've probably built like 10 to 15 of these like experimental projects so far. And I think with each one, you maybe learn a little bit less. Like the first one is the biggest learning curve, second one, slightly less. So this one, I'm trying to definitely like the earlier ones, there were big learnings around like um how to actually like make it available, like how to like yeah, like how to create a URL for it, like what does it mean to host an app? Like I didn't know what that meant. Like
Yeah.
what does it mean to have something in GitHub? Like I didn't understand that stuff. So that by the time I worked on this project, I understood that stuff. Um, for this one specifically, I'm trying to remember if there's anything that stands out. Um, I'd have to think about it more. there's definitely like little things, but off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of anything. Yeah. Maybe it was the first time like that I went a little bit deeper with like an API, like integrating with an API. Yeah.
Nice. And so the tool stack you're using, so you call out a few of them. The repos on GitHub, you're hosting it on Vercel. You're a Claude stan, obviously over like Codex and ChatGPT. What else? Oh, sorry. Well, the podcasting app and API you're using is called
Pocket Casts.
Pocket Cast. What other tools go into this? Like, did you buy a custom domain, or are you just hosting everything on Vercel with their domains?
Yeah. So actually, I'm thinking now of a learning. You're asking like biggest learning from this project. I think this is one of
Yeah.
the first projects that I think I used Sonnet for as opposed to Opus.
Okay.
So yeah, like my building of this stuff really ramped up like over the holiday break in December, which was like shortly after Opus came out. And everyone's like, Opus was a game changer. And I've been using Opus pretty much entirely for my development at work and personal until I think this project, or maybe it was a project before this, but like I wanted to experiment with Sonnet because I was using my own plan, which is like a $20 or $30 a month Claude one, and you
Hmm.
run into limits quickly. And Sonnet lasts a lot longer. And I was surprised that Sonnet has been able to do well on this. So I think
Okay.
that pleasantly surprised me. Like the like basically I no longer think you need like the best of the best models to actually output some pretty cool stuff. So like that was a
Nice.
learning. Yeah, in terms of the stack, so yeah, Vercel I've used a bunch of times for the hosting for the front end. Supabase, I don't think I'm using it for this, but Supabase is the tool that I've used for the back end for some projects. Vercel I love for front end because it's like it has very generous free plan, and you can do a bunch of projects.
Hmm.
GitHub is also very generous with their free plan. Um, I find on the back end it's a little bit harder to find like good free options. Like I run into limits quicker.
Yeah.
In terms of other things, but yeah, Claude Code's the main thing. I haven't experimented with Codex too much. Something like I want to do at some point. Um, I had used Cursor previously, but now I've been using just Claude Code. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, that sort of wraps it up here. Thanks for diving into this. Thanks for showing us around. Very cool app. I'll obviously link this into the blog so you might get some new viewers coming to you. But I guess what are the podcasts you listen to here? What's listening to right now?
yeah. You can see some of my top ones. I mean, Dork. Well, this one is like it's kind of like an
Harry Potter and
audiobook.
the Methods
It's like
of
a
Rational
nerdy,
Thinking.
yeah. It's like a nerdy version, like spin-off of like Harry Potter. So I'm listening to this a bunch. But like Dwarkash is like he's like a very popular podcast talking with. He's very interested in AI.
Yeah.
He has like a lot of people on. Like he's had, I think, like head of Anthropic, head of Nvidia, and just a bunch of other people. Yeah, Lenny's podcast like the go-to for product management. But yeah, there's like a bunch of different ones here.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely be looking for some podcast recommendations on your feed, and I'm gonna have to give this a try and plug mine in as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Mara. Yeah, thanks for giving me an opportunity to share this project.
Yeah, thanks so much for contributing, and we'll get some more of your work related ones in the future.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks.
cheers, buddy.
See ya.